G'day, we're back, and I've had a coffee, and I've actually had a look at the position, and this is where the position where White has played bishop out to b5, lopped off the knight, the bishop's recaptured, and we looked at bishop e7 before we became completely lost, but bishop c5. Alright, trying to get that dark square sort of bind on it. So f3, knight g5, that's better. f4, knight e4, bishop e3, very nice. Castle. Obviously, if instead of castle, we've got bishop to b6, but if that, then you just develop naturally, and if he captures, alright, if he captures, knight takes c3, you can address the position quite strongly, and your pawn can capture the knight, and you prevent a d4 here, and also you've got the rook to b1, and your position's really strong here, and so let's just go back. After castles, knight to d2. Alright, this is one of the reasons why the bishop is doing a yeoman's effort. Also, it helps block any attacks on the king because you've got this hyper-aggressive f-pawn. And so knight d2, knight takes d2. Alright, and queen takes d2, bishop b6. Alright. Now, We've got this really strong idea now. Knight b3. We're trying to bind up these dark squares, control the dark squares. Alright, the knight is actually looking at c5. A beautiful attacking square. It helps look at the square in front of where the pawn can advance. Queen e7. Alright, queen c3. Binding up the dark squares. f6 is a really bad move. Do not recommend it. But if f6, knight c5. Play with your pieces, not your pawns. F takes e. Alright, the f pawn takes the e pawn. F takes e. Rook e8. Obviously, binding up the dark squares, controlling the dark squares, b4. Obviously, black cannot take at e5 now because of rook to f8.
Check.
Alright, very nasty. So after queen to c3, f6 here is just a bit of a disaster move, and so we don't want to do that. So instead of playing the move earlier, which we looked at, I'll just make sure I've got it right in my notes, don't want to make any mistakes. Instead of d5, we're going to look at the alternatives now. And I've managed to finish the end of the last video without getting completely lost. So we want to go back to after bishop c4 and bishop c4, and looking at this line here. Now this all comes from the two knights defense. So the knight plays to f6, the pawn advances, and instead of d5 Alright, we have the first alternative, which is knight e4. Alright, bishop to d5. This beautiful move centralizes the bishop, hits the loose knight. It's just absolutely fantastic. Knight c5, that knight has been moving way too much. Castles, knight to e6. Okay, rook e1. And we can just see the activity, we can see the development. You know, white's just playing logical. Let's develop and get out of here, man. Knight to d2, castle, knight to b3. A very common theme is the knight to d2 to c4 or to b3. Obviously that's overwhelming onto this d pawn here. So d6, making a threat of your own. Alright, bishop to takes c6, ruining the structure, very common theme. And obviously the knight on b takes on d4. And why that knight? That knight's also protecting the king and the e pawn, so you sort of swang wide to go inside. So knight on b takes d4. If obviously d takes e here, then the knight's going to come in here to c6. And you know, this this bishop here is hanging. If queen takes, oh, how's that for a mouse slip? If queen takes queen, then knight takes bishop.
Check.
Alright, very nasty. So yeah, so that does not work out. Alright, so after knight on b takes d4, you don't want to capture this pawn here. What you want to do is you want to get rid of this hyper-aggressive piece. A different line would have been, you know, bishop to d7. You know, instead of capturing the knight. Oh, I'll go back. Went back too far. Yeah. Instead of knight takes d4, there's also bishop d7, and that doesn't work because of this. Alright. So the knight gets to another great wonderful position to attack the center. It's just all crumbling. Everything's moving through. The bishop's about to come in. So instead of that, yoink, knight on b takes d4. Knight takes. Alright, it's the only move. Knight takes, bishop d7, and then you've got this really beautiful developing move, bishop to f4, or instead of bishop to f4, just lop it off. Just increase the activity, the momentum of this rook, and then you just at this point here, I mean, you're looking at the bishop. You're looking at the bishop to come out. Now, obviously, they're probably going to want to get rid of their ruined pawns, but not necessarily. But this position here, bishop f4, followed by queen to f3, gives you a slight edge as white. And so you still have to know how to play open centers. You still have to play quite vigorously. So instead of the move knight e4, alright, instead of that, and instead of the move, d5, we've actually got the move. Well, going back, we'll get to the right idea here. The knight moves, pawn advances. So instead of knight e4 or d5, there's also knight to g4. So in this move, remember, it's about building your momentum, building your attack. And sometimes it's about lining up your pieces against significant cogs like the center, like the king. And what this move doesn't actually do anything except increase the attacker on your advanced pawn. And so queen e2 actually connects with the bishop, but it also helps propel this pawn forward. Okay, so obviously this interferes with the move d6 as well. This move here, so black, because I mean obviously black needs to move the d pawn to get this bishop going. So queen e7, and then obviously overprotect the advanced pawn. Obviously it's also connecting up against a minor cog, there's a little loose pawn there. But yeah, this is just getting wicked control of the center. Bishop f4. Alright, d6 finally gets to go now. E takes d6. Alright, queen takes e2.
Check.
Alright, so bishop takes e2. You want to keep your king's ability to castle. Bishop takes d6. Alright, so obviously you want to lop that off. Now you have these ugly pawns. And so I always say the knight on the rim is dim, but in this point it's actually got a lot of options. For one, it can run towards c4. Remember I said it's a really good theme, but also it's looking at playing to b5, and then you want to look past to the next square, all those dark squares. So at b5 it's threatening the loose pawn, it's threatening to fork the king and the rook. It's this move, if you can't go through this way, why not just go through here? It's a beautiful fork. And so that's how you need to think with a knight. You got to think squares, not pieces with knights. So knight g4 is a very, very interesting line there. And with bishop to f4, black wasn't forced to play d6, you know, and whenever a position isn't very forced, another way to get rid of this advanced pawn is f6. And moving the fool pawn is a bit foolish, not always, just depends. Well, for one, it takes away a retreat square for that knight, and yeah, I don't know. Let's just see. Let's just see what do you think happens here. All right, so of course you take it, and their pawn recaptures. That's the idea of moving it, was to free up this atrocious position, get open lines against the king side. And so the knight can go to, it goes to d2, but obviously it's heading over here to b3. That's the theme. And so queen takes e2.
Check.
Bishop takes e2. And I give this a very, very solid position. And after this position here, I mean, white can castle either side really. The knight's going to go to b3, looking to lop off this pawn. It can't be defended by another pawn. This knight is going to be driven. Well, it's going to be driven back, and so white's got just so many options in this position. It's definitely a winning position, and that's my discussion on the two-knight defense. And so go through it, play it through, and learn the ideas, and understand why things are getting played, and that's key. Alright, next we'll look at bishop c5 instead of the two-knight defense. Alright, take care. Bye!